Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Chel Stars podcast. This is episode 4, and we got a little fun one for you here. A little bit different style for us since didn't have the busiest week in the NHL. With us today, we have our usual co-host, Kyle. Say hi.
Hey guys, thanks for joining.
Perfect. And then also with us, we have our new welcoming our new, host Erin, who will be with us probably pretty consistently, I would say, and giving you a little introduction on her. She is, a fantasy, I would say, master. She's killed us in almost every league and playoff pool that we've, been in. So furthermore, you can introduce yourself now, Erin.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. I'm Erin. Very nice introduction. Thank you, Max. I am indeed the back-to-back Chel Stars Fantasy Pool champion. So hoping to keep the things going as we go into the next season here. Excited to finally be here and get going on this podcast.
Perfect. Any cool fun fact of yourself, or is that pretty much it?
That's pretty much all I do. Win fantasy.
Okay. Wow.
For now, though. Don't want to jinx it.
Well, you've won last 4 of 6 or something like that. It's ridiculous. So
pretty good record.
Very good. Kyle does not have that record.
I'm just over here shaking my head right now. I have no leg to stand on when it comes to fantasy hockey.
Yeah.
Is it a record of most last place finishes, maybe?
Whoa! I think I finished last once, and that's because I got too antsy with my team. I'm usually middle of the pack.
You are usually up there. That's right.
I had a couple good seasons, but I got robbed in the playoffs.
Yeah, playoffs are always rough.
They're crapshoot. They're so hard to judge.
Alrighty, well, we can always talk more fantasy another time. We got a little bit of a, roughly hour-long podcast for you. We're going to talk about, obviously, we have a few little signings that took place this past week. And then also we're going to talk about the Adidas jersey rights not being renewed past this season. As well as just a little talk about our personal favorite and least favorite contracts in the NHL. Not so much just this past summer, since we've already given our takes on that. So I'll basically start us off here. This Friday, yet again, Friday likes giving us some good news. This Friday, Klingberg finally have a big free agent signing. Wasn't most exciting deal, I would say, at least in my opinion, as he signed for 1 year, $7 million in Anaheim. Kyle, give us your thoughts.
What a boring deal. I was hoping for some 7-year monster deal from some team that's going to regret it 2 years down the road when their coach doesn't want him to play offense like he can. But with that being said, I think he'll have a good season in Anaheim next year and hopefully land a sick deal next off season. I don't even know if that takes them up to the cap floor. Does anybody know off the top of your head?
They're just barely above it now.
Okay, so that takes them to the cap floor. Anaheim will be an exciting team in a couple of years. I like what they've done with not signing any terrible long-term deals, especially Henry coming off the books in a couple of years when a lot of their better players are RFAs. I think they're in a good position to build a contender based on their prospect pool and the players that they're surrounding those prospects with.
Yeah, I'd agree. They didn't want to dish out any crazy deals or just keep it nice, low profile, essentially. And maybe next summer they'll be a lot more, crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Erin, what are you thinking on this deal and Anaheim in general now?
Yeah, I would definitely agree that it was a good move for Anaheim. Only committing to 1 year. If Klingberg has a good year, they can definitely try to flip him at the deadline and get some really good assets for him, and hopefully that'll be a more long-term solution for them. I do think it's an interesting choice for Klingberg himself because it is putting a lot on him to do good this season, and if he doesn't, that kind of could hurt his chances of actually getting a proper long-term contract going forward. So it'll be interesting to see what he's able to commit to after this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I think a day or two before that, the news of him signing, he fired his agent, and obviously, who knows what behind the scenes what went down with him obviously looking for a long-term deal and not getting that, and electing to sign for 1 year and basically do this all over again next year. But he's really banking on himself to have a good year.
Yeah, you gotta wonder
he could be forfeiting
if
a lot of
he
money.
was looking for too much or being too picky, because I mean, he seemed to have a strong enough recent history that he should have deserved a much better deal than just 1 year. It was definitely an interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely wasn't. I doubt he would be looking for a 1 year deal. He was looking to cash in on a long-term deal, like most players his age and caliber, but he's electing to do that next year, essentially.
That's got to be so stressful for him, especially going at the end of the next year when he hits free agency again. He's going to be 30 years old.
Yeah.
And
it's a lot of pressure.
That really takes away from what teams are going to be able to offer you. Like a 7-year deal taking you to 37 for a guy who's kind of had an up and down career now. Like he started off really strong, playing under a great offensive system. But he's kind of taken a step back under a more defensive system of that Bonus had. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think this year will really show whether he's a good systems player or if he's a good player.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Big opportunity in Anaheim. He'll play a lot of minutes, and I mean, obviously, depending on how the year goes, who knows if he gets flipped at the deadline, but it's a big year for him nonetheless.
Absolutely. And a $7 million contract is great. Like, if Anaheim's going to retain half of that at the deadline, they're going to be able to, like Erin said, pick up some good pieces.
Yeah, they're getting free assets.
The guy that could put a team over the top.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, they're getting free assets, really. Like, there's no, harm in signing this deal if you're Anaheim. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty much a win for them at this point.
Big win. They're at the cap floor right now. Why not? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Just it's the benefit of having cap space, right? It's the benefit of not giving out stupid contracts that are going to hamper your team, which we'll get into later on.
Yeah, it's a benefit most teams don't have.
God, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so moving on here, another little minor sign just 2 days before that. Finally, we got news out of Edmonton. Puljujärvi signing for, again, 1 year deal, $3 million. Really a prove-it deal, or who knows, could be a sign-in trade, because obviously arbitration was coming up and you don't want to lose him to offer sheet. So who knows if he's really going to actually start the season with them. So I'll pass it over to Erin to start this one.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a relatively safe deal in my opinion. Again, 1 year, not that much money, but I know, Kyle, you can touch on this a bit more. You guys were talking about how McDavid might not be the biggest fan of playing with him, so you got to wonder if that's going to be taken into account when it comes to next year, if he's going to stay for longer.
Yeah, there's been a lot. I mean, not a lot, but some rumblings that Puljujärvi just isn't somebody that can make McDavid a better player just because he's not putting the puck in the right area. His timing's off a little bit. McDavid and Draisaitl see the game at a whole different speed. It's challenging to keep up with them, and I don't think Puljujärvi's quite there yet maturity-wise. But at the same time, I see some similarities between the situation Puljujärvi's in and the situation that Nichushkin was in.
Yeah.
In Dallas. So
yeah,
I mean, I could be totally wrong. It could turn out totally different, but there's always that chance that he's just not being given the opportunity and surrounded by the right people.
Yeah, I mean, with them signing, obviously their top six is pretty signed right now. I'd say obviously they kept Kane, and Kane has gelled pretty well, I would say, with McDavid. Obviously on pace for 40 goals on an 82 game season last year, whereas Puljujärvi didn't seem to really be fully connecting. Great analytics, but wasn't really performing on the eye test.
Yeah, who knows that regression to the mean might hit hard next year, and Puljujarvi really has a breakout season, and
Yeah.
he might get paid. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still so young. I mean, and if he doesn't match with McDavid, I mean, there's 3 other lines he could definitely fit well in one of those and still be a benefit to the team somehow. Just hopefully they can find a good fit for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, almost jumping over now here to a similar boat, I would say. We're going over to the Rangers. They re-signed Capo Caco to a similar deal here. Let me just pull it up. Yeah, 2.1 mil a year for 2 years for, again, very like bridge deal, kind of prove it deal. Obviously been a little bit disappointing so far. I know Rangers fans have been really wanting more out of them, whatnot, so I'll pass it over to Kyle here.
Yeah, for sure. I don't watch Capo Caco play all that much because I just don't follow the Rangers. What I've been understanding though is that he's just not shooting the puck enough. The reason why he had such a great season leading up to the draft was because he was shooting the puck upwards of 5 times a game, and now he's averaging about 1 shot a game. So the chances that are coming off his stick, the opportunities that he's getting in dangerous areas are super low, and he's got to find a way to kind of fight for those areas and fight for those opportunities. That line was doing decent in the playoffs because he was playing with Lafreniere and
Hedel.
The
kid line,
Philip Hedel. So hoping that kind of carries over to next season for the guy. At the same time, I don't want to see the Rangers do well, but that's
not a fan.
What are you thinking, Erin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super familiar on his game either, but I do like that it's, again, more of a prove-it deal than more what we're seeing nowadays is so many long contracts being handed out to these young guys who haven't really played more than having 1 or 2 great seasons. So, I mean, he's still young, right? He's only 21, I think.
Yep.
21, yeah. So he has lots of time. Like, it's not a huge contract. He has the opportunity now to try to prove that he can play at a higher level like he was expected to. So hopefully there's some improvement and then he can earn a better deal from next time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, New York Rangers looking like a very good team again. That kid line, I mean, who knows? I mean, I know they're looking for them to really be an effective line. The one thing you do have to note is that Lafreniere and Hedel, line mates, well, possible line combination there, both are expiring contracts next year. So if they really go off this year, New York is screwed next summer.
Do you think they'll be able to afford to re-sign all of them?
No.
If, let's say, they do go off?
Yeah,
Definitely not, right?
No, with how many people they have expiring next year, no.
No. Especially with I think they have a defenseman, K'Andre Miller. His deal's up as well.
He'll be
and he's been a stud for them. It'll be tight squeeze.
Yeah, knowing defenseman contracts, that will be a whopper, to say the least.
Yeah, no kidding. Jeez, the way things are going now. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit here. So we're going to move into talking about the jersey situation. So obviously, as we mentioned earlier, we've seen Adidas isn't planning on renewing their jersey rights this year. So we'll just start off pretty basic. Who do you guys think is going to be the next jersey supplier for the NHL?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, before this, I wasn't really sure what other leagues were sponsored, what rights were affiliated with them. So I'm doing some research. I see that Nike is a big one in North America, having most of the major sports. CCM has, is the provider for all 3 Canadian junior leagues and the AHL, obviously. So I would say between those two, those would probably be the favorites, but really behind the scenes, I have no idea. It could be someone I don't know, who's big enough to do so. I mean, I haven't heard any rumors about it. Obviously, it'll probably come up a lot more near the end of the season because it still has one more year of them. But maybe Kyle has a thought on that.
It's so tough to even venture a guess. Like, it's just so random. Like what brand gets involved with these kind of deals. I don't know how profitable it is to actually do these kind of deals.
Yeah,
I'd love to see Nike because they obviously make most of the major sports jerseys, and they work a lot on a lot of the national team jerseys as well. And I always find that especially the national team jerseys are pretty mint most of the time.
Yeah, I mean,
but I'd also really like to see like a sleeper kind of come out and bring something new to NHL jerseys. Not that they're like stagnant or anything, but I find that like a lot of teams are complacent with their designs, and a lot of teams just don't have like overly nice designs. So
yeah,
so I'd love another company to come in, put a little spin on it, and hopefully give a new product.
Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting to see. Like I said, I don't know who a sleeper could be, whether that's like Under Armour or like, I don't know, or if maybe different areas of the NHL get different rights, you know, different divisions. The Canadian teams are sponsored by Lululemon, or so who knows exactly. It could be, who knows.
Yeah, so just on the subject there of different teams having different jersey sponsorships, we move into sort of thinking about how the NHL is kind of moving towards more branded sponsors on the helmets a little bit and getting a little bit more aggressive with that. And what are your guys' thoughts about having sponsors right on the jerseys and them all being sort of individualized with more adverts per se than actual designs?
If it helps the team be more profitable, I have a hard time being against it, but at the same time, I can't stand like when you're watching like a La Liga or like some sort of like European league, and the jersey advertisements are all down underneath the arms, like
they're like covered
on the goalie's blocker. Like that is the ugliest thing in my mind. Like put one on the helmet, put one on the chest, like the top chest of the jersey, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. Those jerseys over in Europe are like covered head to toe, basically. Like you almost don't even really see the logo of the team or really anything else, which could put an interesting case on who gets the, you know, who's going to be the jersey provider. Because if more adverts are coming on jerseys, then that obviously means less attention's going to, you know, the jersey provider. With the former, we had Adidas having a big crest right above the logo, right by the collar. So with all these adverts coming in, maybe they're blocking them, and maybe, like we said, a lesser known company comes in and takes the spotlight because it's not going to be as profitable anymore.
Yeah, I could definitely see if a company like Nike, for instance, was interested in having the sole sponsorship rights, I feel like they would not want to have other companies on those jerseys. So if that was the proposal from the NHL, I feel like they would almost be less likely to want to be that main sponsor.
Yeah.
So two questions that kind of come to my mind is, or I mean, the first one's not really a question, it's more of a statement, but NBA does jersey advertisements, and NBA also has Nike jerseys. Yeah. So I wonder if Nike's more okay with there being other sponsorship on their jerseys, and maybe Adidas was like, yo, that's not what we signed up for. We thought that we would have our logo on the jersey and that's it. And you guys kind of duped us, and that's why they might have changed pace on that. But at the same
that's an interesting statement. Yeah.
But at the same time, Adidas does MLS. So and soccer's famous, or football, sorry. Football's famous for having logos all over their jerseys too.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously, who knows what their contract was like, because obviously it's not that they're quitting out, it's just that their contract is ending. So obviously they're seeing the news that these jerseys are getting more and more adverts, so their next contract, they probably were seeing that they wouldn't be the only one on the jersey anymore, so they probably didn't like that, obviously. So that could be a big factor as to why. I didn't really think about that. That's a good point.
Yeah, it could be even that like the Adidas is like, okay, we were paying this much to be that sole name on the jersey.
Yeah.
NBA's cutting us this deal for that same reason because there's other logos. Kind of a follow up as well to the Nike idea, because I think that would be the front runner. Everyone else would be a dark horse in the race. I really like what the NBA has done with like introducing like alternate jerseys, and MLB's really been doing that over the past couple of years. Because the NBA had like a 75th anniversary alternate uniforms this past season.
Oh yeah,
NBA City Edition jerseys, just like really cool color schemes and stuff. And this year MLB City Connect was like their line of some of their alternate jerseys. What kind of cool design? I mean, this is completely rhetorical question because it's just open-ended. But what kind of cool designs could the NHL do with those same ideas of just like crazy color schemes and just like changing it up like 90 degree or 180 degrees from where they're going?
Ooh, that's a good question. Obviously, we've seen in year to year, we've seen all these outdoor games and going to like the heritage classic kind of esque jerseys, so going for retro color schemes. We obviously have the reverse retro jerseys last year, and new ones coming this year. Already saw a leak of the Canucks one, as we saw.
It's gorgeous. Yeah, if that's actually it.
If that's actually it, who knows? But I mean, there's so many different designs. Obviously, you can pay off the history of the NHL with so many of these teams having such rich history and different color schemes, a little bit different logos. I know us three obviously here, and a lot of you maybe listening play the game NHL, so whenever you click a team you see all those past jerseys, which is pretty cool. So go off of that. I mean, they can have a great time designing some unique designs. I would say it doesn't have to be old designs.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, seeing how Nike, as we've said, they're so established already in all the other major sports. Like, they really know what they're doing. So if the NHL is really looking for an opportunity to sort of market their jerseys better, you know, have some more designs, have even like more different neat clothing designs in general, I feel like Nike is just the way to go, because they already know how to design things that people are going to want. And I think they're going to be the best option if we're looking for something cool and unique. And yeah, that would actually be pretty exciting to see what they could come up with.
Yeah, it's the biggest company that would be available to do so. Obviously, like we said, they're most likely the front runner, and obviously the NHL looking to continuously grow the game, so the Nike would be the best to do so, because with the amount of experience and with them already having, you know, being the providers for such other major sports and, you know, internationally, it's almost a no-brainer.
Yeah, and they're and I like what Erin talked about with like just like clothing in general from Nike. Like, everyone owns Nike.
Yeah,
I can't say I own any Adidas anything, but Nike, like my closet, my drawers are full of Nike stuff. So it definitely would resonate, and they would have the knowledge to be able to market it to an audience that they're trying to grow, which is going to be just like a younger audience, right?
Yeah, and with all these unique designs, they can make it more of a, you know, more of a marketing thing. So you see all the time, a little harder for NHL jerseys, but any NBA jerseys, you see people walking around wearing them a lot more than just to games. So, and they're always the unique design ones as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything else to add on that topic? I think we...
No, I think I talked way more than I thought.
Yeah, no doubt. Just want to make sure before I segued. I think the biggest topic that we're going to talk about today is just kind of going... I mean, we talk contracts like the past few episodes, which is really fun. I love predicting if contract's going to turn out bad or good. We're going to take some time right now to go over our favorite contract, but first our least favorite contract. I think this was a fun topic to kind of start to think about and discuss before the episode, because there's a whole bunch of different approaches to talk about this, because you can either look at a contract straight up and be like, that's a bad contract, the player's not worth that, or you can kind of look at it in more of like how it fits into the team and how it affects like what kind of players they can acquire and their cap flexibility. So with no further ado, I'm going to get Max to jump into what he thinks is one of the top 3 worst contracts in the league.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is I think obviously just by doing my little prior research here and just by looking throughout the NHL in this past few weeks, seeing all these signings, I see it's a lot harder to find better good looking contracts than bad. I found a lot more bad ones, I would say, in my mind at least. And look no further ado than Seth Jones. I think easily all of us, I mean, we talked about before, all of us had them on our list. It's I mean, $9.5 million, 8 years. It just started this year, so I mean, with a team that is looking at a full rebuild right now, having an albatross contract for a guy that's going to be in his 30s when it's done, that's rough. I can't, I don't see that any other way. I mean, I'll pass it over to you guys, give your initial thoughts, but I know all of us can agree this is not a good one.
Yeah.
Very interesting to me that they committed to that when they're just basically going through a whole rebuild now.
Yeah.
And yet they're going to tie up so much of their money on one guy who just doesn't even seem worth it to me, honestly, putting it straight.
Well, it's funny because as soon as that contract came out, like there's people that were like, oh yeah, Seth Jones is a good defenseman, like that's a good deal, and then like me and Max were like, that's an awful deal.
Yeah, no, it was like, maybe he's a good defender because he plays a lot of minutes.
Yeah. Is he a good defender
say.
because he positively impacts the play in both the offensive zone or the defensive zone, or is he seen as a good defender because he is forced to play 25 minutes a night?
Yeah, like it's rough too, especially when you consider the Hawks were going into a possible rebuild before they got him, and then they're like, oh, we had a decent season, so we're gonna we're not selling, we're buying. So they go out and pay a lot for Seth Jones, including some young prospects, first round picks. Adam Poquist was the key prospect in there. And then obviously right after acquiring him, he wasn't UFA right away or RFA or anything like that. He still had a year left. They immediately signed him for 8 more years. So essentially inking him for 9 years on the team. And now you see what the outcome is, that everyone else on the team is getting offloaded and he's still stuck there, and no one is taking that on.
Oh God, no! That's not
tradable. Well, yeah. It also has a no move clause, so he can even harder to move.
Oh,
you gotta wonder if when he signed that deal, if he really thought that they were going to be able to keep going and become a contender again, because that's a very interesting choice to have a no move clause and now be locked into a team rebuilding for the next 8 years of your contract, basically the next end of your career, essentially, at this point.
I mean, yeah, unless you somehow can trade him and he can have some sort of tail end to his career. But obviously the Hawks rebuild, they're looking at like we've heard from, the scene, they're looking at a similar case as Arizona, like a 5-year rebuild in a way, like full blow up. Obviously they're going for Bedard. That's some others, but I mean, with Seth Jones on the team, it just kills them for the next few years. And I mean, he's just stuck there. Like, I don't know what his mental health is going to be like.
Do you guys think he regrets signing that deal?
If I was making $9.5 million a year, I wouldn't regret 1 second of it.
Yeah.
I mean, would you rather make 8.5 and have a chance of winning?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there you go.
But what's the best team he's ever been on? He always he always not demands top 2 minutes, but he's always given top 2 minutes. That guy isn't a guy that's ever going to be on a winning team playing top 2 minutes unless he was going to take $6 million a year and play on a second line. That's when he could actually win. But no team he plays on is ever going to win with him on the top pairing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and with 8 years left on this deal, you can sure bet he probably won't see a lot of winning. But you never know.
So my 2 cents with this, I think it was a desperation move, obviously, by the Hawks GM to save his job, but also to hopefully retain Patrick Kane and get him re-signed. If he's if Patrick Kane sees that the GM's adding stars around him, then maybe he'd consider staying. Do you guys remember that 3.5 minute shift Seth Jones played a few years ago on Columbus?
No, can't say I do.
Okay. So we played a 3.5 minute shift, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, this guy's so good for playing 3.5 minutes." At the end of the game, as St. Louis was, as Columbus was nursing a 1-goal lead. And if you ever go and watch the actual video of it, it's just Seth Jones icing the puck, giving the puck away, and losing puck battles to weaker players, smaller players, for 3.5 minutes. Would recommend. It is a good watch.
That's yeah. I mean, that...
And then he got signed to a massive deal a few months later, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He earned that thing, didn't he?
Yep. Awesome. We'll move over to Erin, and we'll hear your what's your top on your list.
Sure. So, I mean, the top one on my list was Seth Jones, but we'll move down a little bit, and we're going to go on to Tyler Sagan. So, he was 9.9 for 8 years. He has 5 years left, currently 30 years old. And it's a very interesting contract because, I mean, he almost deserved it at the time, but since he signed that contract, he hasn't been a point-per-game player since. He's just been injury-ridden, missed a whole bunch of time, and at this point, with 5 years to go, it just doesn't seem like he's ever going to regain enough to make it worth it. So,
yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because he signed that when he was 26, 27. I think Dallas was in a tough position. Either lose him to free agency or sign him to a massive deal, and who knows if they chose right or not.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be a common thing that teams are almost forced to gamble with hoping this player can stay healthy in their 30s. And most of the time, like in Sagan's case, it just does not work out.
Yeah, with 5 years left. I mean, he's had some bad injuries, obviously. Those are hard to recover from, and as we saw it, he missed almost the whole season just 2 years ago at this point. But I mean, I have not much sympathy for him because I have a bone to pick with him when it comes to fantasy. So, take that, Sagan.
Yeah, it'll be a tough next few years for the Stars. Players that are making way less than him have to step up and play better than him in order for them to remain somewhat relevant over there. But
it hampers the team so much, though, because you look and they have some really fun young players, but they're struggling to sign Robertson and Ottinger right now because of those. Him and Ben, I would say.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a great point.
And they're almost stuck in a hard reality. You make the playoffs, but you're not good enough to win.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, Kyle, why don't you give us yours?
Sorry?
Yeah, Kyle, why don't you give us your first worst one?
Yeah. So my first will be Sergei Bobrovsky, the $10 million man down in Florida. had a decent season last year. Good for him. He's still got a couple of years left on that deal, though, after a couple rough seasons to start that contract off. My question to you guys is, how much should a goalie be paid? Because we see two goalies in Carey Price and Sergei Bobrovsky making $10 million a year, and neither of them playing like they earn it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you look at what Vasilevsky's been paid last 2 cup wins for him. One of the higher paid goalies as well, but his contract only just kicked in this year. So really, I mean, that contract of his is just so bloated compared to the rest of the market, at least right now. You look at just abundance of goalies, Shesterkin, Demko, you know, he got Saros, like all these goalies, I can keep going, around the 5-6 million mark. So that's significantly less than Bobrovsky. And for a team that desperately needs the cap space to keep a team together and competitive.
Yeah, that's absolutely it, right? I see guys like Markstrom, Kemper, them making around like 6 million, which might even be high for Kemper, but I see like 6, 7, maybe 8, like the max that you want to play a goalie, because their performances season to season are just so sporadic.
Yeah.
You don't get consistency out of a goalie. The only goalie that we've seen that's actually consistent in the past 5 to 10 years has been Vasilevsky. Everyone else has been up and down. It's really just hoping that you harness the good season and are able to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Just for a goalie like Bobrovsky to be worth that amount every year for the 7 years of his contract, I just don't see it happening. Like, I think that range that you said, Kyle, 6 to 8 mil, that seems reasonable. And most of the best goalies right now, you'll find them in that range. So it just seems, it's very interesting to me why they needed to pay him that much. Like, were other teams going to offer him that much too? Was he really worth that much at the time? It doesn't really seem like it when you look at the going rate for goalies nowadays. But I mean, I guess who knows what the situation was.
I mean, back then he only really had, he was one of the top goaltenders, obviously, as we know, and the best one on the market at the time. The only really contract he was comparable to was Carey Price, who was signed at 10.5 mil. No one else was even close at that time, I believe.
That's true, yeah.
So obviously, with that being said, he probably looked at that and was like, well, I'm basically, you know, or at least a very little bit worth the same as him, so I can get that much. And since then, we have yet to see a contract even close to that. You guys have been saying roughly 6 to 8 mil for a goalie, but if you look at it, the goalie breakdowns go Carey Price 10.5, Bobrovsky 10 mil, Vasilevsky 9.5. Then it goes all the way down to 6.4 with Gibson. So there's a big jump in money right there.
That's a crazy jump. Yeah.
So
you don't see that in any other position. Everywhere else is very gradual.
Yeah. And then you look at the 6 to 5 mil mark, and there's like 12 names, and they're all more or less pretty good. So
exactly, you're getting your Olmarks, you're getting your Anderson, stuff like that, right?
There's some I can go on, but
yeah. So follow-up question to that is, does having an elite goalie increase your chance of winning a cup? I can give you the facts first before you answer it. Okay.
But also with the asterisk of... Okay, I was just going to say, I feel like if your elite goalie is taking up that much cap space where you can't build a strong, deep team around them, then no. But an elite goalie for a better price, for sure.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't think anyone would complain about having Shesterkin for 5.6.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If we're looking at the last 7 cup-winning goaltenders, we got Kemper, Vasilevsky, Binnington, Holtby, Murray, Crawford, and Quick. And I guess you could kind of put Fleury in there a little bit too with Pittsburgh's Murray.
Yeah.
But the only 2 goalies that I think were above average on that list, like for more than like a 2-season stretch were Quick and Vasilevsky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everyone else was just a
kind of like a one and done almost.
Middle of the road goalie that got hot at the right time and took them all the way.
Yeah, I mean, they were still very good goalies, obviously. We're not saying before that they weren't, but you can't say Holtby was going to do what he did in the playoffs that year to win them the cup. You think of that save on Alex Tuck. Oh. The paddle. Oh, my God. Bennington, obviously, since then, basically dropped off. Matt Murray. Big drop off. But, yeah, I mean, in a way, like you said, it's interesting not having an elite goalie, more so just the right timing, and that really goes to show with that position how voodoo it is, really.
Yeah. Hopefully Georgiev this year pulls some of that voodoo out of thin air, and a little back-to-back action for the boys.
I mean, I would say you have a good shot.
We'll find out. Max, what's number 2 on your list?
Well, I had a lot to choose from this one particular team. I will cover one part of this team because I know Kyle, wink or hint to the future, but Kyle will cover the next guy. But I'm going for Marc-Edouard Vlasic. Obviously, 4 years left with $7 million a year. This contract's hampered them for years now. On a team that has struggled to stay relevant and, is really just struggled with this contract being on the back end, and he is, definitely not lived up to that. So I'll pass it over to you guys after this.
Yeah, he was on Team Canada that 1 year, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And since then, I don't think he's done much right.
No. I mean, like...
He was outstanding defensively, but...
It's hard to say. I mean, 8-year deal for a guy like that. I believe when he signed it, he would have been 30 years old, roughly. So you're looking at paying the guy till he's 38. Not maybe the best idea, especially for a guy that maybe doesn't deserve it. That's for sure.
Yeah, he was always great defensively, but like other than that, like there were no skills that ever stood out as like game changing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously points aren't everything. Like you said, defensively he was always there, but he never really had the points to have that two-way-ness, or at least that, bonus to get that money, or in a way, like, two-way-ness to him. Just looking at it now, I mean, and also health issues a little bit here and there, but really just kind of floating out there, I would say, right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to commit to signing a guy till he's 38 years old, he's got to have some solid points in the past to back it up, and I just don't see that from him. It just seems like you got to wonder what the thought was behind that signing, because it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I could see this contract being bought out next year. I know there was heavily rumored about it being bought out this year, and they didn't. With them and San Jose kind of going through being an interesting team, I would say. They got some good pieces here and there, but do they make playoffs? I don't think so at all. But then you look at what they have on their team and how many pieces they have locked up. It's tough gig for I believe it's Mike Guerriere now.
Yeah, he's in tough with just their cap situation in general, and I mean, it's not like he even has like a lot of flexibility, any freedom, like the next like 5 years really.
No,
until your guy Vlasic and the guy we're about to talk about right now, Carlson, until their contracts are up or until they can get moved, they're just in a rough position. Like, I guess that's a good segue into Carlson, where he's making $11.5 million for the next 5 years. Like,
yeah,
that's taking up that's taking up 14% of their cap on one player that has lost several steps and is very injury prone. I mean, he had some good stretches last season, but it's just not the Karlsson that we're used to. It just sucks that they dug this hole for themselves trying to stay relevant with declining assets. It's really putting them in a tough position.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll mention it. He's 32 right now with 5 years left. So again, another defenseman you're paying up until late stages of their 30s. And again, a guy who's injury prone. Maybe, I mean, don't want to knock on wood right now, but I mean, maybe doesn't even make it to the end of that contract with the amount of injuries he's gone through. And every year, he, like you said, good stretches, but then follows it up with a poor injury. Sad.
Yeah, at this point, I'd be surprised if he lasts.
Yeah, could be a destined LTIR contract.
Robida Island.
Yeah.
So my question kind of revolving around Karlsson for you guys. So we were kind of talking about it earlier, how the lack of possession and the lack of scoring chances in hockey versus like a sport like basketball. There's so much more luck and randomness involved in hockey. Is it worth it to stay competitive with a middle of the road team, or should you be pulling the plug earlier than you anticipate?
Well, that's a tricky question, because really it's really up to everyone's personal opinion, because you look at teams that every year go on, like you said, luck, or go on Cinderella runs during the playoffs, maybe pull it off when they weren't really the favorites. You see a lot of times in the NBA, really, when the team's a favorite, more or less, they're always they're favorites for a reason, and they usually almost pull it off. NHL, it's such a wild card with teams like, and the decision to stay relevant and, you know, in a way mediocre, can hurt them in the long run. And we're seeing that with really teams like San Jose. We just talked about Chicago, how they're basically stuck with such a contract, which ideally in the first place they shouldn't have ever gotten and whatnot.
And another one too is Philadelphia too. Just trying to sign a bunch of guys that can put together a decent season, but there's no plan there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically putting everything on the, like, you know, just putting it all out there, and no real plan or anything. Just kind of, oh yeah, let's get this guy, get him out there and try and do it. Not, you know, none of this big, you know, 3-5 year plan or outlook, I would say. Because, I mean, ideally, before Erik Karlsson, in this case, gets signed, surely you can look at it and be like, okay, if we're paying a guy an $11.5 million till he's 37, surely that's going to hurt us in a couple of years. And well, we're seeing it already. It was pretty quickly that it was hurting them.
But you got to think about how much thought and planning comes into all these decisions too, though. Like, it's not like they're going into these contracts assuming they're going to work out poorly. Like, you know, they think they have a plan, they think it's going to work out. And I think it's so hard to admit that it didn't work sometimes. I think, Max, you mentioned the whole mediocrity thing, just being a mediocre team a mediocre team forever. Like, a team could easily do that, but it's just all the management finally admitting, okay, we have to just make ourselves bad for a little bit so we can get better. They just have to cross that line. Yeah.
I mean, we basically saw that happen with Chicago. They finally realized that they were not going to be competitive with the current team and completely blew it up this summer. And
that's hard. I mean, obviously, fans don't like that. And it's hard to attract attention when you do that to your team. But in a few years, you know, that might be the best thing they ever did.
Yeah. I mean,
mad respect for blowing it up and actually trying to build a winner in my mind. Erin, who's your next talking point?
Yeah, so we're going to go back to the defense here. Following up the Jones signing, I had Darnell Nurse. So Jones kind of set the bar for defense here. And we saw Nurse sign a $9.3 million deal. He has 8 years left in that contract here, which is a lot for somebody who's kind of struggled early on in his career. He had one real breakthrough year, but he hasn't really, in my opinion anyways, established himself as a true number one defense yet. I mean, he has his moments. He plays a lot of ice time, but he just has so much inconsistencies in his game still that, in my opinion anyways, I just don't think he's worth that price tag yet.
Yeah. Especially when you look at players like McAvoy and Makar that are making the same amount of money as him, but making their team so much better.
Yeah, I mean, he's not even on the top power play. Like, his points, I mean, he had 35 points this year. They just don't line up at all with any of those other top defense in the league.
Yeah, I mean, he had that one pretty big season, and like we see most of the time in NHL, really that's almost in a way all it takes, and he got paid. And basing off of that Seth Jones deal, he went for what, in a way the number one defenseman on the team gets paid. We saw so many of them that summer get paid around that same mark. And I mean, he's bad. He lost a lot of value, I would say, because of his playoff run. He was injured. He got a lot of hate. I know that. I like him as a player, but do I think he's worth that much? No, but I think he does add a lot of value to the team. And I know he has great buddies with McDavid, if that helps, because I know Edmonton, obviously behind the scenes, wants to keep McDavid there, obviously long term, and keep him happy.
Do you think that played into their decision to offer him that big of a contract? Do you think McDavid had a say in that, or was in their ear a little bit?
I mean, I don't think he had much of a say. I mean, I think him being a good locker room guy plays big, obviously, so they want to keep him on the team long term. But as for value wise and what he can bring, it's not as big as some of these other guys around him at that price point. It's again a contract that is just now kicking in its first year, so there's 8 years left, and by the time he's done it, he'll be 36 years old. So again, a guy ending in his 30s, whereas a guy, I don't want to talk too much about some of these other good contracts, but some of these other defensemen are a lot younger than him, making similar money. So, it was a big risk.
I think the Nurse contract was just a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. Like Nurse had the number he wanted, and he's either going to sign that contract or walk to free agency. And Edmonton's a lot worse without Nurse in their lineup most nights.
Oh yeah, I mean, he plays so much. He obviously, is out there for a reason, and they need him on that team, or else God knows what they'll be looking like, especially last year.
Yeah, that's that. Moving on to our third go around. Max, who you got next?
Yeah, I mean, I'll make this quick because I just realized we've been talking for a while, guys. Viewers, just forewarning you, obviously, clearly this is not a podcast ending at an hour. We were talking before this. We thought this would end in roughly 45 minutes, but we sure know how to talk a lot more than we know. Anyways, though, I'll go over to my next one, and as you can almost maybe tell, I'm going off of a theme here. I'm going all defensemen. This next one, again, just kicking in this year. It's Colton Pareco. So 8 years left, $6.5 million per, on a team that obviously trying to be super competitive, trying to win now with what they have and how deep their team is. But that contract, in a way, is starting to hurt them now, and it's going to be really bad later on as well. So I'll pass it over to you guys. Give your thoughts there.
Yeah, I feel bad for the guy because he should be a fantastic defenseman, but just a couple of injuries really hampered his progression in the last couple of years, and it looks like it's going to affect him pretty long term, and in turn it'll affect the team and the dynamic that they're able to bring to the ice season after season long term.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. I can understand them wanting to keep him, seeing as they are in that win now mode. But for that long at his age, again, just all these signings we're seeing where they're being signed when they're almost 30 years old, they just never seem to end well. And I just feel like in a few years, as you guys just said, it's just not going to be worth it anymore. And they're just going to be stuck with him. And at that point where maybe they want to make some changes, but they're not going to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, you can look throughout the whole team. I'm looking at it right now. You got Justin Falk, Torrey Krug, Pareco, and Leddy all signed for the next 4 years. Plus, Leddy's the 4-year one. Everyone else is longer. So they're
and all of them are all around 30 years old, all of those guys?
30, 31, 31.
Yeah, so they're very stuck, to say the least.
Top four, as you would call it, defensemen are all the top four for the next 4 years, because those contracts also all no trade clauses on them. So
wow.
That's going to be their defense for the next while, as you can see.
Yikes.
You got Scandella signed for 2 years, Bortuzzo signed for 2 years. That's the same decor you're seeing for the next while.
Yeah, they don't really have any young defense at all looking at their roster here.
No, I mean, the only one that comes to mind is that Scott Perunovic.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Who they're really hoping can, break through, but I don't even know how he gets much ice time based off of what you're paying these guys and who they are, really. Because they just signed
they had Vince Dunn and then lost him in the expansion draft. That was the only real prospect they had for a few years there.
Yeah. So it would be interesting here for them. I mean, win now mode, if they can win a cup next year, maybe my mind changes on it, but it's not looking good in the future.
Exactly. Erin, what's your last contract?
Yeah, so my last one is back with another team who has many questionable contracts to choose from. But Philadelphia, I've gone with Kevin Hayes. So his was 7 years, 7.1 mil, still has 4 years left. And I mean, just the point production from him to deserve that contract just doesn't really make a lot of sense. That season before he signed there, he had 55 points in 71 games. That was by far his best season. Since then, the 3 years after that contract, he had 41 points, 31 points, 31 points. So at this point, you just can't really see much room for growth.
Yeah, I mean, you're paying ideally a good top 9 guy, but you're paying him first line money, debatably. And, we talked about it on the team trying to stay relevant and try and keep things together and try and get a good team out there. But that contract is hurting them. And you see it with the theme with a lot of these contracts. When they get signed, almost immediately everyone is saying it's a bad deal. And I remember when this was signed, everyone was laughing. How did he get this money? Like Erin said, he didn't have much of the points to back him up. I mean, I don't know exactly as a player. I've watched much, but I don't think he's that great defensively. So I don't know what he really did to earn that, especially that long of a deal. You're looking at
there's another common theme here is that he's 30 years old already.
Yeah.
And for that length of time, like we've seen with all these other bad contracts we've talked about already, it just, at 30 years old, you're not going to peak after 30 years old. You got to think the peak has already happened. So
Yeah, Kyle, what's your thoughts?
Just trying too hard to stay relevant, trying to put players into spots that they will not succeed in, and that's why Philadelphia is one of the worst teams in the league last season, and it's probably going to be one of the worst teams in the league this season.
Oh yeah.
It's just bad contracts all around.
Yeah, I mean, none of us mentioned it, but Ristolainen is another prominent one we talked about beforehand. They just signed Nick Delorier for 4 years for a fourth line grinder who will probably be scratched most games. Under Tortorella, he might play though. Who knows?
He'll play a lot. Fuck.
Yeah.
He'll be playing more than Hayes. That's my bold prediction for this season. Delorier has more minutes than Hayes.
Wow.
Hayes could get injured. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, question I had for you guys. It's kind of on the same topic of Philadelphia. I'll try and make it quick here as we don't want to go too long today. But if we just talked about San Jose and Philly, how about I was to say you had to take over a team right now as GM? Which one would you rather pick and be? Yeah, both tough choices.
None of the above.
Stay at your desk job.
I'll take the early retirement.
Wait, did I have options, or was that an open question to like any team? Sorry,
No. Your options are be a GM for the Sharks right now or Flyers.
Sharks or Flyers? Sharks or Flyers? See, I like a lot of the players on the Flyers. Like, I think Konechny's like a decent player. I think if you surround him with the right people, he would be decent. Same with Farabee. I really like Farabee. I'd say Flyers in a heartbeat, probably.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's...
Yeah, I would agree as well. There's just very slightly more potential there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What kind of prospects do they have?
San Jose just looks way older.
For this. Both teams are just... I guess Sharks have better prospects, though. That's going to be the only trade-off, because they have that Eklund kid that they drafted last year. He should be a good goal scorer. He might even make the team next year, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, he might.
He'd be exciting, but at the same time, like, both those teams just, like, most of the players who are in their prime right now, obviously the team sucks, or they're too old. Damn.
Yeah, San Jose is undoubtedly older, though, and more locked in than this, I would say. It's close, though.
So, I would choose Philadelphia, because you can still, like you can still flip Konechny, Farabee. You might not get a lot for them based on how the team's doing in the standings and that, and then buy out Hayes. Van Riemsdyk expires next year. Ristolainen, you could probably trade with a little bit of an incentive, because people love big right-handed defensemen. It doesn't matter if they can't skate, if they're dumb, if they're like it doesn't matter as long as they're righties and they can.
So is he going to the Canucks then?
Sorry?
Is he going to the Canucks then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Ristolainen would fit in great playing behind Myers and
oh God.
And Poolman.
Yeah.
That's my answer. And they got Carter Hart, who could still turn into something. Goalies are so tough, right? Like, he could do amazing next year, or he could shit the bed again. Moving on now. I still have one to do, right?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. So my last one was Charlie Coyle. Reason being is just that he's not playing the role that they need from him. He was signed to do top six center role, and he has not done that at all. I'm still amazed by that contract because he signed for 5.25 a year when he's had 32 points in a season. So kind of a sign the deal and wish that he turns into a player that he isn't, and that just didn't happen.
You brought that same point up, I think, 2 podcasts ago when we were talking about the free agency and how Boston haven't done anything, and you literally said, how did Coyle get that? And the answer is I don't know what he did, because it's hurting them, and we're seeing that with them again trying to be competitive with what they have on the roster, and they're haven't done a lot this summer because of it. They're just so locked into these guys that aren't performing to their roles, really.
Yeah. I mean, not that Boston has too much time left in the window that they're currently in, but it's definitely affecting how competitive they can be. If they had a top six center that was the quality of like a William Karlsson instead, I bet they would be probably Stanley Cup. Well, not this past year because Colorado was so dominant, but they probably would have won another cup in the last 10 years. So
yeah, and they keep bringing in people to really try and fill that second center spot. They just had Hall on, now they're flipping him for Zaka, so they're just
who won't be able to do that spot either. No offense to Zaka, but just didn't develop the way that everyone thought he would, and that doesn't even mention like Nick Foligno as well, who's not been able to do it. Like there's just been a carousel.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think you had a point about it, but Pasternak being done in a year, oof, that'll be interesting.
And Bergeron probably done in a year.
How old is Pasternak now?
He's 26.
26.
So he
could very easily go somewhere and get a longer term deal.
Oh yeah. He's the UFA as well, so they can lose him for nothing, which would be really bad.
With the way Boston's looking in the next couple of years, I'd be pretty surprised if he stuck around, to be honest.
But it sucks because they just put McAvoy under a huge contract too, and McAvoy's unreal. So
yeah,
it's so hard to line up all these guys though. Like you have only like a couple year window where all these players are going to be at their best at the same time, and then all of a sudden, you lose one or two key players, and that's it. But then you're locked into your contracts with those other guys who now, I mean, it's great, they're there, but you just don't have the pieces around them to actually use them to their potential.
Yeah, welcome to NHL.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, it's the game where teams change really all the time, and really everyone's core is never fully set in. Like you think players are together forever, and then really out of nowhere it changes. Like Florida, this is going back to last week. I didn't even realize Huberdeau could be someone they would trade. Makes more sense based off his contract and everything, but really, like, I don't. You just never know nowadays.
Yeah, it's funny. You think about like what it would be to be the GM for a day. Like here we are, sort of trash talking all these contracts they've made, but it is such a gamble. Like, how are you going to know who's going to stay healthy for 4 or 5 years? Who's going to get injured 1 year and that's it? Like, it's a crazy market.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, like we said, time and time again, this past, last little bit going over these contracts, you're signing for 8 years, going into their late 30s, mid 30s. It's, I mean, in a perfect world, that thing lives up to it, but this is not a perfect world. That most cases,
it's so rare.
Yeah, it's just the ever-changing game, and really the only deals you see being long-term deals you see being effective are when they're younger, I would say, and they're ending at their late 20s, if anything. And that's what with Florida went with Kachuk.
Yeah. I think like one of the questions that comes to mind is like, will it ever change? Will teams stop giving out these 8-year contracts, 7-year contracts to 30 and 31-year-olds? Or will it always be just a way of doing business and saying like kind of what Pittsburgh's doing now, where it's like, okay, we had a lot of good years, we want to remain competitive for the rest of Crosby's career, let's just keep on throwing money at people and just remaining like competitive team in the sense of making a playoff spot, but not necessarily a competitive team in the sense of getting past the first or second round, just based off of the durability of where the players' careers are at.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Who knows? Like, you'd need like some, in a way, so like almost one management group now to do that. Like, kind of refuse these deals and change the game, and go on some runs in a way. Like, it's not going to change with how it is nowadays. Like, GMs are coming in and doing more or less the same thing, throwing out oodles of money, not really thinking about too much of that, or are these 8-year deals actually being worth it, like especially ones that go into their 30s and whatnot.
Yeah, well, you said like a group of GMs, like it would have to take 32 GMs to be on the same page about it, or else somebody else is going to pay that contract, and the cycle will just continue to just everyone trying to remain somewhat competitive. I wish I knew like the numbers, like the business side of the NHL a little bit more, so I could be like, oh, you know what, it actually makes sense to sign this deal because this team is going to profit this much over the course of that contract based on the fact that player is on the team.
Yeah, I mean, that's
like
still
like not talking. Oh, exactly. Like not talking like a winnability and like that thing, but like when it comes to jersey sales, ticket sales, like playoff ticket sales, just all the things that not legacy player, but that name and that brand bring with that contract. It would be super interesting to find out like the little ins and outs of it, and truly see like what deals are actually terrible deals and what deals are just like a part of doing business.
Yeah, like I feel like in a way, when it comes to the hockey side of things, most likely GMs would agree these deals aren't worth it, but business wise, who knows? I mean, I would love to know. I love to be able to sit down and talk and see how these actually unfold for teams. Like, but I feel like undoubtedly.
Yeah, so if the Vancouver Canucks want to invite us one day to like go through numbers and stuff, I'd be totally down.
Yeah, if we can just sit in,
SkyTrain down, join in some contract talks for Bo Horvat.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Make it happen, guys. Our following's big enough to do that, right?
Oh yeah, it'll get there. They'll hear.
Yeah,
they'll hear.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they will push up the chain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's kind of where we'll finish off for this episode. Man, we love to talk.
Yeah. Holy crap.
But that's what we're here for. That's what we're doing. So thank you, Erin, for joining us, and we hope to have you back many more times. Thank you, Max, for setting everything up as always.
Yeah.
And always give us your feedback. Follow the Instagram page. What's the sign, Max?
At Chel Stars.
Perfect. We got some blooper videos up, and we'll keep on coming up with ideas for there too.
Yeah.
But once again, thanks for joining us, and we hope to have you join us next time as well.
Next time we'll actually finish our discussion on these contracts, since we've completely overblown it today.
We will finish what our plan next episode.
Yeah, we got a bit too into the bad one, so maybe next week there'll be some positivity out of here.
Yeah, this is a very pessimistic episode. You're totally right.
Yeah, we're never having any player on.
Yeah. We will never get a player guest.
Yeah,
we're talking about players like this.
We're too negative.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. I'll let Kyle do basically a second outro since he kind of
I already did it, so I don't think I need to do another one. But I guess thanks again for listening, and